Let's talk now about histograms. And to make a histogram, we are going to need to make what's called a frequency table or a frequency distribution. Now, a lot of times histograms get compared to bar graphs, which we made in a previous video. So like a bar graph like this, notice that the data along the bottom axis here is it's words, it's labels, it's qualitative, categorical. Okay. And because of that, our bars are separated because these groups are separate from each other. Blue is different than red, is different than green. Okay. So for this type of data, we would use a bar graph if we're counting up, how many schools have blue as a color and red as a color. Those are separate groups. But for a histogram, it's going to look a little different, and we'll explain why as we make it here. So for a histogram, we're going to use data that is quantitative, okay? And so we're going to go back to temperature data that we've used in previous examples. This one is the high temperatures in Des Moines in the month of January, and we have it for 2 years, 2025 and 2026. For this purpose, we'll just use 1 year. We'll just use 2026. And what we're going to do is make what's called a frequency table or a frequency distribution. So I'll come over here and say, well, our first column here is going to be what's called a class. And a class is just a way to group our data. So if we're looking at temperatures that range from a low high of 2 to 60, maybe we would think every 10 degrees would be a good way to go. So I'm going to make my groups from 0 to 9, and then from 10 to 19, and then 20 to 29, and so on. Now, notice I'm not making them from 0 to 10, 10 to 20, because then if I had two 10s here and I had a 10 in here, I wouldn't know where that 10 belonged, right? Or if I keep going here, 30 to 39, I do see a 30 down here. Where would I put that 30 if the 30 was here? Would it go here or would it go here? So I'm just defining my groups or my classes this way. Now, I need to keep going all the way up until I get to 60, and I'm not quite there with this group. So even though there was only one day with 60 degrees, I need a whole new group for that. Okay. Now, the other part of my frequency table or my frequency distribution is the frequency. How many days was the high temperature from 0 to 9? Well, we can see there were 2 days in the single digits there. How many days were in the teens or the tens? 1, 2, 3, 4 days there. And then in the 20s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days there. That's a lot more. And so on. So 30s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 40s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're almost there. There were 3 days in the 50s and just that 1 day in the 60s. Okay, so we'll get rid of this data for now. So we're kind of lumping things together into a more general group. Now, if I add all these days up, I should get a total of 31 because there are 31 days in January. You can check me on that, but I'm pretty sure we do. Okay, so now let's talk about similarities and differences between a bar graph and what we're about to make, a histogram. So similarity, it's going to have a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. Okay, on that vertical axis is going to be a count of frequency, just like a bar graph. Okay, and we're going to have a variable down here as well. And that variable, well, we'll define it here in a little bit. Let's look at our classes. So our classes start from 0 and go all the way up to 69. We're going to call that 70, and you'll see why here in a second. But what I'm going to do is go down on this axis, and we'll say we're starting at 0, and that's a temperature of 0. And then I'm going to count by tens. Okay, so there's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. All right, I'll label these. And you'll see why we need that 70 after we make our bars, but even if I put it there and we don't use it, that's fine. All right, so what do we have here? We have high temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, Now we're about ready to make our bars, but we need to know how to section off our vertical axis here. So our frequencies go as low as 1 and as high as 9. Now sometimes you might even have a 0 in here somewhere, and that's fine. You just have a section without a bar. But looks like we need to go to at least 9. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And maybe I'll just go to 10 and whoops, I already messed that up. I was going to just count by twos. Made it a little too easy on myself, I guess. Okay, so from 0 to 9, we would have a bar that is 2 units high, meaning a frequency of 2. Okay, now that bar comes down at 10, but we understand that 10 is actually the start of the next group. And the next group would go up to 4, so its bar is going to be exactly twice as high since our scale starts down here at 0. Then the next one would go all the way up to 9, so that's our tallest one. Now, these bars, just like in a bar graph, these bars should be evenly spaced. Let's see, 7. Whoop, kind of missed that one a little bit. I've got a leaning tower here as we go along, but that's okay. Let's see, 40 to 49, we had 5. And then 50 to 59, we had 3. And then 60 to 69, there was just that one day. But because the 60 degrees falls into the 60 to 69 category, we had to have that extra column out there. Okay, well, sorry for the messiness. I'm kind of writing at an angle and it's a little awkward. But now what we can see is the distribution of the data. And we can see that most of the days kind of piled up in the middle of our distribution between 20 and 40, and the highest 10-degree section was from 20 to 30 or 20 to 29. And so we get a quick view of the distribution of the data. These get used a lot, especially in the field of statistics, especially when we have many, many, many data points that we need to kind of get a quick glance at. Okay, last thing we need to do here is just give it a title. So we could call it the high temps for Des Moines. And then we'll say January of 2026. Okay, and so that's a histogram. Key differences between that and a bar graph. The bars touch each other, and that's because one group, one class leads directly into the next, into the next, into the next. And so it's a continuous reading. It's not separate groups. Okay, and then the data that we have down here on the bottom is quantitative. It's numbers. And so those are the main differences, I guess. To make a histogram, we make up groups that we can place our numbers into. So these things called classes that are just a range of numbers. And then we count how many data points fall into each of those ranges. And that's what we're graphing. And that is a histogram.